Calvin Castine in beautiful downtown Ingraham in the town of Shazy. We've come to what is affectionately known as John Deere Hill to look at some tractors. And this big baby here isn't even part of the display. Hometown cable cameras were here for the first time back in 1992 when Bob Venn and I stopped in to talk to Tony and Marsha Trombly and their collection, which at that time numbered in the 50s, of John Deere tractors. But the collection has grown in the past 18 years, and there are now, in this summer of 2010, 70 John Deeres on display just off Route 9, which at one time was the main route between New York City and Montreal. Once a busy area. In fact, this stretch of the road here wasn't here at one point. Right about here is where the old road goes off, and after several fatal accidents involving this old road and the curve that was here in Ingraham, the state decided to straighten the road, and it's been a much safer stretch since then. We talked to Tony Trombly at the Shazy Old Home Day, and he informed us that it took 4.5 days to bring these tractors out. I can't imagine where someone stores 70 tractors. It took 4.5 days to get them out here. He and whoever happened to be volunteering to help him that particular day. And heaven only knows how many days it's going to take to put them all away when it gets into late fall. So he said it could be, not that it would be, but it could be the last time he ever puts out this many tractors. So if you're watching this in 2010 and you'd like to see this for yourself, you'd better get it done this year, because this in all probability is not going to be an annual event. Brought along my grandson, Abe Eichler, and it looks like he's going to take advantage of exploring every one of these tractors in the row here on John Deere Hill. So we're going to look at them one at a time, so bear with us. We're going to start with some lawnmowers. Unfortunately, there are no tags and nobody available to tell us exactly the year. I'm sure Tony and or Marsha, or even Tony's father Lyles, probably would know most of them, but Tony and Marsha would probably know all of them. But it's a summer day, July 27th, 2010, as I may have mentioned already, and when the sun shines, it's time for the farmers to make hay. So this is a John Deere 70 lawnmower.
Is this a lawnmower?
And next to it we have a 110, and this is don't know if it's still Shawnee's tractor, but it had her name on it. When Bob Venn and I were here in '92, Shawnee was a 2-year-old, and she's now thinking of advancing her studies at UVM, but she is a college student right now, just finishing at Clinton Community College, and as we're here today, she is over exploring the possibilities at UVM. This is Jesse's tractor. Jessica, and it's also a 110. Of course, they've taken the blades off these here, so these were just something that the kids could putt around on. This one is Lyle's. And I don't know where the fourth one is. They have 4 kids, so I'm not sure what the fourth one is. It looks like Lyle's had to do a little mowing on his. This is also a 110. Also a 110 right here, so this might be the fourth one, and the name of the fourth child escapes me right now. I saw more of the girls in their careers at Shazy because they were both heavily involved in soccer. Here's a little bit bigger mower. It's a 330. And just to add to the display, I guess you don't have to be a tractor to be on display here. Here's a Snowmobile, a 600. And before this show is over, I know we'll see at least one more Snowmobile. This L has a plow behind it. 1 furrow. Got the metal seat. The steering wheel is off to the side. Got the wide wheels in the front. The little can on the muffler there is to keep the rain out. In this case, it's a Hunt's tomato can, tomato soup, tomato sauce. Which hits a brake and your clutch. This one is, and a lot of these, most of these are pretty much as is paint-wise. Tony and Marsha probably have, and Lyle's have gotten them running, but they haven't got time nor the inclination to make these look brand new. So they are an as is, and that's the way we kind of like them. And again, you got the can, and up here you got looks like some kind of a cover there for that little exhaust. A lot of covers. This John Deere color is a little different here. This is not your usual color. I don't know if this is a repaint job or just the way it's handled. You can see in the wheel that it's a John Deere green, but this here has got more of a bluish green color to it. And around the seat is the John Deere green. And so it looks to me, looking at this this fender here, that maybe it was repainted. 'Cause it looks like John Deere green under and painted over by somebody who got a green but didn't get the John Deere green. And it's a mower underneath it. And here's what we got looking forward here. So our journey has just begun. Doesn't have a model number here. Doesn't have a model number. So this is not as good a tour as we would get if Tony and or Marsha were available. Here's a 320. My guess is they've just put them out here size-wise, certainly not in order of age, because we see some older ones on the horizon here. And I can mention right now, this one here, oh, this one's got a padded seat. This was in comfort. You're riding in comfort here this time. You were riding in comfort. I should mention that when Bob, Ben, and I were here in '92, we came across a John Deere B. Here's another 320. And of course, one John Deere B looks a lot like another. And somehow that B just looked a little more familiar than it should have. So there's a decal on it that said it had come from Dragoons, and we were able to track down the fact that my father had traded that John Deere B in. It was the first tractor that he'd owned, and he traded it into Jack Dragoon and Moore's, and that's where the Dragoon farm equipment decal came from, and based on where Tony ended up buying it from and so on, we were able to determine that it was indeed my father's former tractor, his first tractor, and we were very pleased when we were able to buy that back from Tony. Tony and Marsha are not in the habit of selling John Deere's, but because it was going back to the family, they did agree to let us purchase that. And it was a very happy day when we surprised my father with the delivery of that tractor into his yard on the Ridge Road in Champlain several years ago. I'm not sure the model of this one. Many of the tires on these tractors are going to need some air before he puts them away, so it's going to be a long, arduous effort. And you have to applaud Tony for doing this. I can't imagine why he would. I know he is proud of his collection, but take basically a full week of work just to get the tractors outside for display is asking a lot of anybody, and that's what he did. He could be spending his time on the golf course, but he'd rather be doing it with this hobby and sharing that hobby with everybody that happens to pass by. This is a model 420, and next to it, this one looks a little smaller than the others. I guess they didn't get the yardstick out and measure them all exactly. It might have a little more power than the one next to it. It's got power steering, but I don't readily see a model number on it. Oh, it's a 420. It is also a 420. This one's a little greener. And the gear works here, so to speak. The motor and everything are kind of exposed. So no chance here for us to figure out what the model is here. It's got the wider wheels, and I can guarantee you that steering wheel was not that color when the tractor was purchased brand new. Here's an MT, and I hope you're counting along at home here, so you know as we approach vehicle number 70, and the identity of the can covering the muffler is long gone. There's no label on the can. here's what we've seen thus far. And here's what we have yet to see. It's a very pleasant day in the North Country. Temperature in the 80s, low 80s at the moment. It'll rise into the mid to upper 80s later today. This one has been painted over with no indication of what the model number might be. One of the front tricycle style wheels is missing, and the other tire is flat, and it looks like the bead has been broken. So this will require a lot of work to get this one back in storage. And he kind of buys a lot of them as is, so the cushioned seat is not there. If you got an extra cushioned seat hanging around for a John Deere, there are any number of tractors here that could use one. Maybe you just take your seat and carry it from tractor to tractor here at the Trombly farm in Ingraham. Another one with no numbering on it. It's been repainted. There are specks of blue in this one. So you have to wonder if at one time somebody had painted this John Deere a blue color. You can see more evidence of blue right there, so it must have been a strange looking entity when it was painted blue. Here's a Caterpillar type, but it's a John Deere. Caterpillar is a brand, not a generic name. This is John Deere. This one has the John Deere green and yellow colors, but John Deere also come for industrial purposes in their standard industrial yellow. And here's an example of that. I would imagine that Tony and Marsha are not done collecting. If you have a John Deere, or know someone who has one that is rotting away on a wall somewhere, or out in the field, or in somebody's barn, you could give them a call, and they may or may not be interested in it. Here's a 435, and it's a diesel fuel. And again, we've got a lot more to see here. We'll, from time to time, show you where we stand as far as this display is. And of course, if we look around, we saw that big one to start with. This was what Tony was driving when we saw him. He's also got a working tractor there. Your working tractor there, your working tractor there, and I'm sure a few more out of sight. So these are the ones that are here for display only. He's got a lot of others that are still being utilized. Some farmers are very, much like some people who buy cars, are very loyal to a brand. The Tromblys apparently are very loyal to John Deere. In my own father's case, he only owned that one John Deere. rest of his tractors ended up being Farmalls, which are now International Harvesters, which are now Case IH. Then he bought some David Browns, and he had some other brands besides that. So he wasn't loyal. He just he bought what he felt he could afford and utilize at a given time. It gives you a little more flexibility when you're willing to do that. But if you're one of those purists who only want a certain company's vehicle or a tractor, then your options will be fewer. Here's an older one. It's got the classic metal seat, which I would imagine after bouncing around on that for 6 hours, you had parts of your body that were a little sore. The John Deere emblem here is raised. This is a raised emblem. I'm not sure if we can, my finger is adding too much light to it, but you can see it's in there as part of the casting almost. I'm not sure if that's a casting. It might, yeah, it is a casting, yes. So it's cast right in there. So this is an older model. And there's another older, and this one has its year written on it, 1938. And we'll go behind the steering wheel. Metal seat. This is what it looked like. There's an unpainted one. And again, we take our view of what we've yet to see. And where we've come from. This unpainted one is no indication. It's got a pulley here on the side. Definitely an older one. It's got the cast John Deere on the front. Over the radiator. Got another pulley type of apparatus on this side. And just the remnants of the original decal. And here's a iron-wheeled one. Well, this one here is definitely got to be one of the oldest ones that they have in their collection. You don't want to drive down Route 9 with this. It might do a job on the road, and it might do a job on your dentures as you bounce off the tarmac with that. But you have to remember that when this came into effect, first of all, the farmer might only use it in his own fields, so he never had to worry about paved roads. But when this tractor came out, there weren't too many roads that were paved anyway. So paved highways were not a problem. And look at the front wheels here. This is made for going through some mud. You probably didn't get stuck very often with this little baby right here. nice iron-wheeled John Deere tractor. And look at this one. This one here. It's got your very, very basic look, almost like wagon wheels. Smooth. You wouldn't go through much mud with this baby. And look at the tiny, tiny little seat. The steering wheel, the rubber is dried out. I think there's a lot of room for tractors like this to be on display. It's nice when you can restore them and make them look brand new, but there's a lot to be said for seeing a tractor that has weathered the years and to see what it looks like. Not sure, I think it said the model number there originally. I don't think this is the original seat. It looks like it was made for a little bit bigger seat than that one. But that's the seat that ended up on there, and it looks like that seat's been around for as long as the tractor has. Maybe not on the tractor all those years, but certainly it's been around. And you talk about the cast lettering. You've got it right here on the back. Very, very nice. And another old one. This looks like an early rubber version. Tires are just kind of molded around it looks like it was originally an iron-wheeled vehicle, and the owner cut up some old tractor tires and fit them around, and that's why it looks like it's rubberized. But I would venture that this was probably not an original rubberized, and they are riveted or bolted right to the frame of the wheel. Bolted right on there. And look at this interesting wide tricycle type tire in the front. Most of the ones we see now are two, but again, it's not a tire. It's rubber around the original iron wheel. Not a speck of green on this tractor, but it's very, very interesting to look at. Again, we're on Trombly Hill, Ingraham area, in the hamlet of Ingraham in the town of Shazy, New York, which is located a few miles north of Plattsburgh, and just about where town of Beekmantown and the town of Shazy meet. We are still in the town of Shazy, but not by a lot. Another John Deere. This one's got the, even though it's the cast, the John Deere is painted yellow on it. And this was Lyle's. I'm thinking this was Lyle's, the son of Tony, not Lyle's, the father of Tony. There are two Lyle's Tromblys involved here. Tony's father, Lyle's, and Tony's and Marsha's son, Lyle's. Now, this is one that you would probably see at tractor shows. General purpose, skinny, iron wheels. The Model B. It's an early B. It's got the iron wheels in the front, and the later Bs had the steering column underneath the hooded area here. So these are the early ones, and the other type of them, and there's a name for that type, which I'm not at liberty to say because I don't know it. It prevents me from saying it. There is a distinction, and there is a name for that distinction. And the model that my father had bought was one of the earliest models of the where the steering is underneath the hooded area. And they've painted around the decal here. You can see where the decal is. It's cracked. So they painted around the decal to leave that decal exposed for as long as it'll hold up. And that tractor's got a twin. Another one that looks just like it. I'm sure there are differences, which would probably be standing out like a sore thumb if Tony were here to explain them to us. There's where we've been. Here's where we're going. Keep counting along at home. Here's a Model A, not a Model A Ford, but a Model A John Deere. It's got the rubber tires, spoked wheels on it. There's a 1935 general purpose. It's similar to the two that we saw earlier, except that it's got the rubber tires, still has the spoked wheels. And a lot of rubber. Still got the cast John Deere in the front. The decal is even a little more faded than it is the other one. Sitting out here in the sun will help fade it even more. This model here is a 1935, so the other two we saw I'm guessing may actually be older than that. Another one that's been used but not restored paint-wise. It's a bigger model, bigger tires now. The steering is still on top of the hooded area. Now we've reached some John Deere H's, and we have a deer sticking out of the, sticking actually alongside of the muffler. And of course, this we should point out wasn't that healthy for the farmers. This is the exhaust. This is the muffler, and the exhaust would come out here. And if you're driving along and the wind is not stronger than Your tractor speed, well, that exhaust is coming right in the direction of the guy driving the tractor. So a lot of farmers who spent a lot of time in the field on their tractors spent a lot of time putting exhaust into their lungs, and you have to realize, without giving it much thought, it doesn't take a genius to realize that's not the healthiest thing you should be doing. No cabs here to protect you, just nothing between you and the exhaust except 3 to 4 feet of space. This tractor has also an H. It's a 1939. It has cultivators attached to it. The cultivators are set up in this case to go between the corn rows. You didn't spray to kill the weeds back in these days. You cultivated your crops. Your corn was growing. You would drive along with the cultivators, and between the rows, the corn would be right here, and to either side you'd have the cultivator blades, and they would pull up the weeds and keep that area weed free. So until the corn got to a height where it was no longer practical to do that, because you'd be knocking the corn over, you'd go out there with your cultivators and keep the weeds out and give your corn a chance to grow without the weeds interfering it. By the time you stopped cultivating and before you started harvesting, the weeds did have a chance to make a comeback, but by then the corn was high enough that they were able to see the sun, which is important for corn, and they had a start as far as competing for moisture and nutrients with the weeds. So it wasn't as effective as spraying as they do now, but I would guess it was a lot healthier without putting the chemicals on the fields. Nice iron seat. Gotta love those old seats. And of course it's just sitting there in that piece of iron or steel, and you're bouncing around in there. And you can imagine that those have probably snapped at one time. And I wouldn't want to be carrying something behind me, a rake or a baler, and have that seat snap or a bolt come loose and you come falling backwards and the tractor keeps going. And you're right there with the rake or the corn planter or whatever. And sure, at one time or another it happened to some poor farmer. Another rusty John Deere. We're still making progress. Another flat tire with the bead broken, so I don't know if he lifts these up to get them out here. That would be a interesting 4.5 day show in itself, I guess. Tony did tell me when I saw him at the Shazy Old Home Day, they had some fella on a motorcycle from England that drove by and stopped in and found his collection fascinating. Here's a John Deere B. Flat tire on that side. Tires in front don't look any better. My guess is he pulls them onto some kind of a flatbed, then rolls them off. Doesn't do the tire much good if you roll it little ways with the with it being flat. Looks like that rim has seen better days though. That's a John Deere B, and right next to it we've got us another John Deere B. And the steering is now disappearing under the hooded area. There's where we've been. Here's where we're going, another John Deere B. This one looks in pretty good shape. Tires that we've seen so far are full of air and ready to go. Here's a A. The A was a little bit bigger than the B. When you make the A your big tractor, you've got nowhere to go but down. So that's when they went to numbers after decided to make something bigger. They couldn't call it an A- or an A+. Although there were, I believe, I know Farm All got into this. The Super M's and the Super H's. I think the A had a Super A or something along those similar lines. If you're looking to land your airplane here, he's got the wind sock to tell you which way the wind currents are coming. Tony and Marsha's John Deere Hill in Ingraham, New York, once again. This is another Model A. Got the single tire in the front. And we're in the midst of looking at 70 vehicles here. 70 tractors or John Deere vehicles, because we've seen several lawnmowers and a snowmobile. This display could be out for the final time here in the year 2010. Could be out for the final time. Look at this metal seat. It's got a spring loaded. Two wheels in the front, 2 tires in the front. Of course, they had lights. And there's the tail light back there, which is not red. It's just a standard light color, interchangeable with the one in the front. So they look the same coming and going as far as the lights in the darkness. And another Model A, or John Deere A. Tires look a little weather checked. Spent some time in the sun. This one is not going to tell us kind of a model it is. That portion got eaten away here. Got a broken headlight. And this one here, I am reasonably sure gets pushed here. I don't think it runs too good. Since we're now on the internet, we're going to issue a challenge out there. Anybody got more than 70 John Deere vehicles in their collection? That tire just looks plain nasty. And it looks like it's leaking a little bit of oil. Well, there's another one that's not driven out here. Anybody got a larger collection out there in the World Wide Web? Let us know at hometowncablenetwork.com or plattsburgh.com, and heck, we'll put your video on our website too and share it with the world. Wide wheels in the front. Like my grandson Abe is got the wife Judy here too. He's enjoying this. We drove by here about a week ago, and he was quite excited when I told him we'd be stopping in and getting an up-close look at this. Tony and Marsha are very cooperative if people want to stop in and take a closer look. They're very, very cooperative and friendly people. But they're running a farm here, so they haven't got time to give guided tours. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if somebody politely stopped in and looked around and treated the area with respect. Nice green seat on this one. Somebody's taking the time to paint that one. Another one that's been painted green other than John Deere green a few years back, because that green is also all but disappeared, and there are a couple of shades of green and several shades of rust. The wide wheels, which are much safer than these tricycle type wheels. Tires like that in the front compared to this, they're much safer like this here. Kind of like the three-wheeler ATVs, why they get outlawed, because there's safety. And the same thing with these tractors here. There's very easy to tip over if you're not paying close attention. So the wide wheels are all that they put out now. But back then, for some reason, they put out a lot of tractors with the tricycle type of wheels. Not sure of the model of this one. Another one with a flat tire. It's a 530. When they're painted like this, you know, they're in the 50s or 60s or 70s year-wise. Probably even though, I don't even know if they're late 50s if they did have this. So, you know, it's not an early 50s or a 1940s or earlier tractor. Model 530. That's where we've been. This is where we're going. We're well on our way. I'll be honest, it's got the fancy little, it's not a decal, it's got a self-contained little thing here. What's more impressive, that or the cast-in lettering for John Deere? I'm sure this is a lot less expensive than, and then probably aren't, well, there's some castings there on the side, but they weren't going to waste a casting up there in the top when they can use sheet metal. Bigger tractor with with, again, no indication of the year or model number. This one came from two planets here. The front is got new parts, and the old has got the looks like original. Almost looks new from here, doesn't it? $630. Bigger wheels in the front here, big tires. In fact, the one on that side looks bigger than the one on this side. It could be an optical illusion, but I don't think it is. Not sure what that's all about. A lot of rubber left on those back tires, though. When you go to your favorite tire store and buy tires for your car and complain about the price, imagine having to buy tires for all these tractors. No model number. There's a diesel, John Deere 70. The wide wheels. Still got the old style look to it. There's a 720. Power steering is a 1957, so they did have the two tones in the 50s. 1957. You could buy a 1957 Chevy or one of these babies back then. So you can imagine this looked new and spiffy way back when, 53 years ago as we're taping this. Back to a 1948, it's a Model D. And this looks like definitely a workhorse here. Very compact as far as the equipment. And this is what it looked like for the driver. Looks like Abram is taking advantage of the climbing on some of these big babies. Here's an R. A diesel. Doesn't have a year. There's diesel fuel, very common now. It wasn't all that common back then. And of course, anybody who uses diesel knows that it gels up in the cold. So farmers up here in the North Country, and I think some of these early diesels, particularly the early ones, had gas to get them started, and once you warmed them up they would run on diesel. So they actually had a gas tank and a diesel tank, I believe. This one's a pretty big baby right here. There's this 820. Not much room between the fenders and the tires. And of course, many a farm boy would have his favorite girl sitting right there as he was out in the field. Wasn't the safest thing in the world, but it happened an awful lot. Farm boy was out working all day, didn't have the leisure time. When his young lady friend came to visit, she wanted to spend some time with him. She'd sit on the fender and ride around in the field with him. There's one that came from just down the road. Not from the Dragoons though, but this came from a John Deere dealer, Giroux Brothers. It's a diesel, and it's an 830 model. And you see that instead of putting a can on the top, they got smart and they got the exhaust going out the side. Little thinking going on there. There's a a 2010. I don't think this is this year's model. That may be deceptive there. I'm going to assume it's a model 2010, not the year 2010. And I'm not sure that model number. It looks like it's a legitimate model number 2010. So this is not a brand new tractor here. It's that's the model, not the year. Kind of like that Jim Croce song. 95 was the route you're on, it wasn't the speed limit sign. And here's a 3020 futuristic tractor here. 1,000 years from now, this is what they'll be driving. Oops. Well, actually, it's an ambiguous tractor. It's probably a 3010 that wants to be a 3020. But it's a 3010. And the 3020 just happened to be a piece that they could use to fit that spot. And you know what? We've just about come to the end. Here's where we've been. And we are here on John Deere Hill in Ingraham, New York. And look out, Abe has been stuck in the wheel here. He got stuck in the tractor wheel. He's in a lot better shape than the guy who was driving this snowmobile. I asked Tony about that, and he says the story changes depending on who he's telling the story to. I'm guessing that when he put this first tractor out here, the snow was 12 feet high, and he parked his snowmobile up on the top. So this has got dual wheels in the front, dual wheels in the back, and it's a big baby, fully enclosed with the cab. The snowmobile is an option that most of your John Deere dealers won't offer. Tony and Marsha are always thinking of new ways to display their equipment. So there you have it, a 1-hour visit to the John Deere Hill farm here in beautiful downtown Ingraham in the town of Chazy, New York, 2010. And if you want to see this, you better get out there this year. Thanks for watching, and for those of you supporting viewer-supported local television, Hometown Cable, it's a pleasure for my wife Judy to accompany me here along with my grandson Abram. Thanks for watching. And a special thank you to Tony and Marsha Trombly for allowing us to do this. Hometown Cable TV.